She raised her plasma blade to kill me, then she saw my tattoo and whispered, "You're one of them." The stars above Kalar Prime flickered like dying embers, veiled behind the ash of orbital bombardments that had ceased only a day ago. The ground was still warm with the memory of fire. The wind carried no birdsong, no insect hum, just the wails of shattered cities and the crackling of burning metal. Commander Idrin's soul stood in the ruins of what was once Sector Bastion 12, a soldier by rank, a ghost by fate. She wasn't alone. Around her were the broken pieces of the last human outpost on this side of the galactic verge. Scorched flags fluttered weakly from crumbling watchtowers. The youngest recruits, barely out of their training shells, were now smoldering outlines against durasteel walls, and buried somewhere under rubble lay her sister. "I told you not to come here," Idrin whispered to no one. "I told you." She reached for the communicator on her wrist, but the static was all that answered. The satellites were gone, the fleet either retreating or erased. A warhead-shaped scar marked her left forearm, curling around a faded emblem inked decades ago, an ancient tattoo forbidden now by most star systems. The design was primitive, two stars cradling a broken planet, encircled by thorns. Most aliens didn't know what it meant, but the old ones did. That symbol had once burned bright during the siege of Elatha. That symbol meant Earthborn, Warborn, a relic of soldiers created during the Terran genocides, the darkest chapter of galactic history. And she was the last one still breathing. The dominion of Carix had come like a storm, fast, unannounced, merciless. Their war decree hadn't even translated before the skies began raining fire. Most humans didn't even know what they'd done to deserve it, but Idrin knew. It was never about what humanity did. It was about what they could become again. "You're bleeding," came a voice. Idrin turned, weapon rising reflexively, until she saw the speaker, a child, no more than 8, dirt-streaked face, raw hands, and eyes that had already seen too much. "You shouldn't be here," Idrin murmured, lowering the barrel of her sidearm. "Go back underground. The air's still toxic. There's nowhere to go." The girl replied, "You're the last one." Idrin's throat tightened. "How long have you been watching me?" "Since the sky stopped screaming." A pause. Then the girl stepped forward, trembling, holding out a cracked data crystal. "This was from the outpost, AI. I think you're supposed to see it." Idrin took the shard and slotted it into her forearm's embedded reader. A flicker. Then the familiar face of Colonel Varen, her old mentor, shimmered to life in low-rays projection. "If you're seeing this, Idrin, then the Bastion has fallen, and you're it. Listen carefully. The duel is real. The Carix matron has issued a blood challenge not to Earth's fleet, but to you. To you. She knows what you are, and you know why." Idrin's blood chilled. The matron herself, a duel. She remembers what your kind did, what the old units were trained for. She wants to erase that legacy in front of the galaxy. But if she sees the mark, if she remembers what it really means, she might hesitate, and that might be enough. The projection glitched, static, then black. Idrin stood in silence, crystal cooling in her palm. The Dominion hadn't come to conquer. They'd come to end a bloodline. The old Terran Warborn were once used as final weapons, humans augmented beyond moral boundaries, deployed when all else failed. They had won impossible wars and committed unspeakable atrocities. No wonder they feared the mark. The tattoo wasn't ink. It was a gene lock, a signal, a curse. The next morning, the duel was arranged. She walked alone onto the shattered skybridge that hovered over the scorched ruins of Bastion 12. Wind howled through broken pylons. Drones circled. Across from her, descending in royal silence, came Matron Velisira, towering Carix war priestess armored in obsidian plates. Her voice echoed like thunder. "You carry the blood of the Warborn. The galaxy still weeps from what you did." "I was born after the genocides," Idrin replied, "but I still carry the shame. Then let us end this bloodline with honor." As Velisir raised her plasma blade in ritual stance, Idrin slowly peeled her left glove away and revealed the tattoo. Everything changed. The matron flinched. Her blade shimmered. Her eyes for them widened in disbelief. "You were marked," she whispered. Behind her, the Dominion soldiers shifted. The drones froze midair. A tremor ran through the steel beneath their feet. Velisir didn't lower her weapon, but she didn't swing either. "Impossible," she said again. The tattoo glowed faintly in the morning light, alive, pulsing, and Idrin's soul. She smiled cold and slow. "Guess you didn't kill us all after all. You should not exist," the matron said, but her hand trembled. and her honor-bound blade did not fall. The Carrick's dominion was not used to hesitation. Their fleets darkened stars. Their language was law in half the known galaxy. They demanded subservience, not respect, and when they issued a blood duel, it ended in fire. But today, on the fractured sky bridge over a dead human bastion, time itself seemed to pause. Commander Adrian's soul stood motionless, the war-born tattoo exposed to the world. She said nothing more. She let the silence do the bleeding. The drones above recalibrated, scanning her body again, searching for implants, augmentations, any sign of deception. None. It was real. Velasir, as Honorblade finally lowered an inch, her voice had lost its certainty. They told us the last war-born was killed during the purge of Cinder's Reach. We buried your line in neutron ash. Idrin took a step forward, boots crunching through the scorched steel. And yet, here I stand. The Carrick's matron didn't step back, but her troops behind her did. A single mark had undone centuries of certainty. That symbol wasn't just a memory. It was a myth the Dominion told its children to frighten them into obedience. The human who could not die. The one who burned the crystal spires with a heartbeat. The last breath of Earth, forged into war. It wasn't all true, of course, but enough of it was. After the duel dissolved into standoff, Idrin was taken not as a prisoner, but as a relic. The Dominion warship Velcarath had been modified for high-value containment. Her cell was pure null still, walls humming with a psychic dampening field. She didn't resist. They needed to understand what she was. She needed to understand why now. Hours passed. Then, the door hissed open. A slender figure entered. Not Carrick's, not Dominion-born. A different shape, different air. Eyes like shattered ice, posture too graceful to be a soldier. You're not one of them. Idrin said quietly. The figure inclined its head. Correct. My name is Elune. I represent the Ithari Observers, neutral architects of galactic law. Idrin's brow furrowed. Ithari, thought your kind vanished after the collapse. We did. But some events demand resurrection. Elune stepped closer, ignoring the dampeners. The matron hesitated not because of your tattoo, but because of what it implies. That the humans didn't die off. They hid. And not just any humans. You, war-born. Idrin said nothing. Elune placed a metallic sphere on the floor. It opened with a click, projecting an ancient image flickering, distorted, a battlefield. Dust storms, a figure her size, her gait striding, through columns of fire. I've seen this, Idrin muttered. Balatha. But that's not me. That was Velaroth. She was the last war-born to go rogue. Yes, but the Carricks think they're all the same. They don't care if it was Vela or you, they only fear what you might do again. Elune crouched. Do you know what's happening across the French colonies? Why Carrick's fleets are suddenly erasing human enclaves, even peaceful ones? Idrin's eyes narrowed. No, I thought this was revenge. Elune shook his head. It's fear. Something's coming. Not just war. Erasure. The Carrick's dominion has intercepted signals old Earth code originating from systems we abandoned a century ago. They think it's a resurgence, a resurrection of the war-born project. That's impossible, Idrin said. We were sterilized, tagged, watched. I'm the only one left because I went off-grid. Are you sure? Elune asked softly. The silence that followed wasn't peaceful. Then the walls shook. A siren blared, pitch shrill and sudden. Idrin jumped to her feet instinctively. What's happening? She demanded. Elune looked toward the sealed chamber door. His voice, when it returned, was grave. They found another. The Dominion ship was under assault not from rebels or pirates, but from a ghost beacon emitted near the Delcar Rift, a signal encoded with genetic keys long thought extinct. When Dominion scouts approached, they vanished, all except one. It returned drifting, silent. Inside the shuttle was a name, scorched into the hull from the inside. We remember. Idrin stared at the transmission logs. It was Terran battle code. Only someone bred inside the war-born academies would even recognize the syntax. But Idrin hadn't sent it. They're not just surviving, she whispered. They're calling. The matron returned 2 hours later, eyes shadowed, her expression unreadable. She placed a new blade on the table between them, a ceremonial one. This was meant to take your life. Now it is yours to wield. Why? Idrin asked. Velasir hesitated. Then she said, because there is something worse than you rising in the dark. And if the old stories are true, the galaxy needs monsters to kill monsters. Idrin lifted the blade, its weight familiar. Her jaw clenched. That we fight monsters. Together. The matron inclined her head. No. You fight them. We just try to survive. As Adrin left the cell no longer a prisoner, but a weapon, she passed the ship's internal window. The stars beyond twisted unnaturally like they were being pulled. Through memory itself, and far in the black, a shape moved, human-shaped, but wrong. Her war hadn't ended. It had only just begun. It moved like a man, but no man should echo like that when it walked. The Dominion flagship Velkrath drifted in the dark between systems. Its engines dimmed to no flare, trying to hide from what it did not understand. Inside its core, Adrin's soul stood beneath a cold light tactical holo, watching a new kind of terror unfold. The returning probe's memory logs had been decrypted. It showed footage, grainy and shuddering, of a shape emerging from the rift, a figure clad in crude armor, welded from starship plating and bone. Its gait was uneven, but powerful, like it had been rebuilt too many times. And where its eyes should have been, only burning red glyphs shimmered, ancient Terran script glowing like coals. Reclaim, remember, return. Adrin hadn't seen anything like it, but in her bones, she knew what it was, a failed warborn, or worse, a resurrected one. It's not just surviving, she said quietly to a loon, who stood beside her, hands folded. It's been waiting. The Athari diplomat nodded. The Dominion's purge didn't reach every crater. Some of the old cradles might have remained buried deep, silent, dreaming in radiation fields. One of them woke up, and now it's calling others. Adrin finished grimly. Velasir had convened a private war council within the ship's central vault, something no human had ever been allowed to enter. Massive Carrick's warlords lined the walls, whispering in subharmonic speech. But when Adrin entered, silence rippled outward. Her very presence shattered protocol. She stood before the Dominion leadership, unchained, armored, armed. Velasir rose. The enemy is us, risen from ash. And she, the matron, gestured to Adrin, is the only one who understands what's coming. A scoff echoed from the flank. One of the younger Carrick's generals stepped forward, blade drawn. And we trust her. Why? She bears the mark. If that thing out there is calling to Warborn, then she is next. Adrin didn't flinch. Instead, she turned, yanked up her sleeve, and stabbed a knife straight through the tattoo, deep and clean. Blood spilled across the floor. I served no signal, she growled. Not anymore. She tore the knife free and tossed it at the general's feet. If you still doubt me, pick it up. He didn't. The chamber was silent again, this time with respect. Back in her private quarters, Adrin sat alone, the blade that had once been meant to kill her now resting in her lap. She remembered Cinder's reach, the fires, the choking black, the other stronger, faster, who didn't make it out. She remembered the screaming of her sisters when the failsafe command came through. Disavow, dismantle, deny. She was 13 when the order was given to end them all. She had run, hid, disguised herself in stolen civilian skin. Decades passed. She became a ghost. Now they were back, not just calling to the living but waking the dead. It was a loon who brought the idea. A relay system, he said, short range, hard line, nothing that pings subspace. We wired together a resistance net, where, Adrin asked, human colonies are glass. The Carricks won't fight alongside me, and the Warborn who rise won't care who's in their way. The loon activated a star map. One sector blinked an old name, Native Spire. Adrin narrowed her eyes. That place was marked red zone, unrecoverable, only on official charts. I've seen movement there. Independent ships, pulse mining, even encrypted Earth code. If there's any place left willing to fight or listen, it's them. She studied the route. It would take stealth, fuel, and diplomacy she no longer had. But maybe she had something better. The Velkrath descended over Native Spire 3 days later under full cloak. The world was blackened, its atmosphere barely breathable, but dotted with signs of underground life, old life, human tech, rusted but functional. At the landing zone, Adrin stepped out alone, facing the silhouette of a figure wrapped in radiation scarves and combat mesh, a rifle aimed at her chest. Name, the voice asked. Commander Adrin Soul, she replied. The figure paused. Warborn? Adrin didn't answer. Instead, she peeled back her collar, revealing the healing tattoo, scarred now, real. The rifle slowly lowered. My name is Vero, the voice said. We thought none of you made it. Most didn't, Adrin said. But the past is walking again, and we either stop it, or it stops everything. Vero looked back toward the spire. Others emerged, survivors, fighters, tech hackers, scarred, burned, but human. Then welcome to the last fire, Vero said. We've been waiting for someone like you. That night, in the tunnels of the spire, the resistance formed, not under flags, not with fleets, but around a fire, old Earth fire. Idrin stood, holding up a shard of the memory core from the Dominion probe. She played the footage of the armored abomination moving through flame, the glyphs, the signal. Then she said, "This thing out there, it was built by us, left behind by us, but we're not it anymore." She looked at every face, young and old, mutated and whole. We're not monsters, not symbols, not myths. We are human, and humans don't run. They didn't cheer. They didn't salute. They simply nodded and began to prepare. We thought we were preparing for war. We didn't realize war had already begun inside us. The night was quiet, save for the distant hum of deep core reactors buried beneath Nader's spire. But the stars above churned like something vast and ancient had begun to stir just beyond the veil of light. Commander Idrin's soul stared at the blinking crimson alerts on the tactical slate in front of her. One by one, colonies were going silent, not bombarded, not overrun, silent. No signals, no beacons, just gone. A kind of death worse than extinction. They're not attacking like the Carricks, Vero muttered, pacing the command cell beside her. No warnings, no transmissions, just no space shadows and empty hails. It's like they erased the concept of the place, because they're not just weapons, Idrin said. They were never just soldiers. She looked down at her scarred tattoo, now a faint outline under her skin. It hadn't glowed since the Delcar rift, but she still felt it, like a pressure in her spine, a distant whisper under her skull. Something was calling to her. In the outer corridors of Nader's spire, people had begun to whisper about the warborn. Some feared her, others revered her, but most didn't care who she was, only that she was fighting back. That night, a child approached her in the forge hall. A little girl, maybe 5, dragging a toy drone missing one of its legs. "You're the soldier," the girl said softly. "Idrin Nell. That's what they tell me. Are you here to stop the monsters?" "Yes." A pause. "Even the ones inside?" The question hit like a shockwave. Idrin didn't answer. She just looked at the child, really looked in, saw her own face in the mirror of time. The same face that once asked Vela Roth why they were trained to kill and not to live. By the third day, the resistance had grown. Hackers restored ancient relay stations, smuggling messages across dead systems. Old orbital cannons were rearmed. Ships were welded back into the sky, and under Idrin's guidance, a signal countermeasure was constructed designed to block the activation code. Still buried deep in any surviving warborn's neural net, we're not just hunting ghosts, she told the team of engineers. We're cutting their leash, but something was wrong. Every time they activated the jammer prototype, Idrin's vision blurred. Her pulse raced. Her hands trembled. The signal wasn't coming from the rift anymore. It was coming through her. Elune returned with a black box and ancient Earth artifact, encoded with warborn origin data. He risked Dominion territory to retrieve it. Inside was something even Idrin hadn't seen. Project Helix Directive. In the event of mass extinction or system betrayal, warborn gene code may activate dormant. Survival instincts autonomous, uncontrollable, and self-replicating. These subjects may not be aware of their transformation, classified as Omega events. Kill switch override. None. "What is this?" Vero whispered. Idrin's face was pale. She didn't speak for a long moment. Then finally, "It means we weren't just weapons. We were seeds, and something had watered the soil." That night, Idrin stood in front of a mirror. Sweat poured down her back. The room spun. She'd been dreaming in languages she didn't know, seeing battles she'd never fought, faces of people long dead, hearing voices whispering coordinates, dead zones, ghost sectors, buried labs. When she looked into the mirror, the glyphs flashed faintly behind her eyes. Something inside her was waking up. She slammed her fist into the mirror, shattering it, blood dripping from her knuckles. Not again. Not like them. But it was already delayed. The first attack came without warning. Nader's orbital sentries blinked out. An EMP wave struck the outer spires, and from the east ridge, a shape emerged, tall, armored, and walking onto legs. Not a fleet, not an army, a mirror. Idrin saw herself older, broken, twisted by time. The armor was fused to its flesh, the tattoo still glowing, still alive. It raised its head toward the sky and howled a sound of data and agony, and every screen in the spire bled static. A single glyph appeared on every terminal. I am the memory you abandoned. The resistance scrambled. Guns fired. Cannons roared. But the creature moved like a god. Fast, fluid, too fast. It tore through the outer walls with its bare hands. And when it stopped at the edge of the central plaza, it spoke with her voice. Idrin's soul, it said, reunite. She stepped forward, surrounded by soldiers, all weapons aimed. Her voice trembled with fury and fear. I'm not one of you. You were always one of me. A pause. Join or burn. The resistance waited for her answer. Her heart pounded. Blood still dripped from her knuckles. And then she raised her weapon. No. The blast that followed shattered half the plaza and sent the war-born doppelganger reeling backward into the fire. But it laughed and retreated not. Defeated, but testing. The message was clear. This wasn't a hunt. It was a reunion. It didn't want to kill me. It wanted to absorb me, to finish what Earth started. The fires from the assault still burned in the ruins of the eastern sector. Twisted support beams smoldered, casting ghost-like shadows across the cracked concrete. Medics rushed between crushed carters, pulling bloodied survivors from the rubble, while static still fizzed across the comms. Idrin stood in the heart of it all, her mind echoing with the last words the creature had spoken. In her voice, reunite. The doppelganger had vanished into the dust, its silhouette dissolving into the toxic dusk like a memory, but the damage it left behind was undeniable. Half of Nader's spire had collapsed. Defense systems were crippled, and the resistance, newly born, barely breathing, was on the verge of splintering. Idrin stared at the symbol etched into the cracked pavement, a perfect replica of the war-born mark burned into the stone by plasma. Pharaoh limped up beside her, his face darkened with ash and disbelief. That thing was you, he said hoarsely. No, she replied. That thing was what I could have become. They buried 19 that night. No ceremony, no words. But before they lowered the last of the bodies into the dust, one of the engineers handed Idrin a memory core recovered from a ruptured terminal. It was blackened, corrupted, while a loon managed to decrypt fragments. As the code scrolled, Idrin's breath caught coordinates, thousands of them, war-born facilities, activation chains, genetic keys, and one label stood out from the rest, ECHOO. Vero leaned over. What's Echo Zero? Idrin stared. It was the prototype cradle, she whispered. The first war-born hatchery, long before the genocides. It's where the algorithm for our minds was first forged. I thought it was vaporized during the fall of Tyros. The loon looked grim. It wasn't. He tapped the core. This message wasn't sent to us. It was sent from Echo Zero, and beneath it, a single audio burst played, distorted, rasping. Human, Idrin, we're not dead. We never stopped. We remember. They knew they had no time. The doppelganger hadn't come to destroy Nader's spire. Not yet. It had come to send a signal, a warning to the other sleeping cradles. Now, across the galaxy, war-born remnants would stir in silence. Rising from the cold beds of forgotten labs and buried biovos, Earth had created them to end wars, and without masters, they had become a war unto themselves. If we hit Echo Zero first, Idrin said, pacing before the hastily reassembled command holo, we might sever the neural broadcast chain. These things are connected. They share memory. You're talking about going to the heart of the disease, Elune warned. I'm talking about burning the root before the forest catches fire. Vero looked at her, his face unreadable. You think you're immune to it? He asked. You think standing in that cradle won't awaken something in you? I don't know. Idrin said softly, but I know what happens if I don't. The journey to Echo Zero was a suicide mission, hidden in a dead zone beyond the reach of galactic nav charts, surrounded by fractured moons and debris storms. The site had been lost even to the Dominion archives. Only the war-born knew its true location, burned into their DNA. Idrin felt the pull like gravity, like music under her skin. Louder with each light year, she boarded the resistance ship Penance, a retrofitted freighter armed with nuclear cores and phase disruptors. Vero, the loon, and a strike team of 11 came with her. None of them expected to come back. Echo Zero hung above a ruined planet like a tomb of forgotten gods. It was vast, kilometers long, latticed with bone-white scaffolding, and black monolith towers, The cradle's outer shell pulsed with weak power signatures. Still alive after all this time. The ship's AI hesitated before docking. Elune frowned. Why is it still running? Adrien closed her eyes, because it was never meant to die. They landed in silence. The air inside was breathable. The lights still flickered, and the walls, they whispered, voices, her voice, echoes of every war-born memory ever recorded. In the central chamber, they found it, the heart of the cradle, a vat the size of a city block, filled with preserved neural stem matter. Behind it, a wall of glowing capsules, some shattered, some still pulsing with life. Inside those capsules were humans, or things that used to be. Some were half-formed, others frozen in silent screams. Genetic errors, rejects, failures, but all still alive in some way. And above them, suspended from a cradle arm, was the original mind frame, Echo Prime. Adrien stepped forward, breath shallow. The glyphs on her skin pulsed. Then a voice, hers, but layered with 100 others, filled the chamber. Welcome. Home. Everything exploded at once. The walls pulsed red. War-born sleeper pods began to stir. The doppelganger appeared rising from beneath the platform, emerging like a memory long buried. It stared at her. You came back, it said. Adrien raised her weapon, eyes blazing. I came to end it. The creature tilted its head. Then end yourself. For you are the seed and the flame. Echo Zero is you. Destroy it. You erase your own origin. The team aimed their weapons. Adrien held up her hand, then turned to Elune. Give me the core detonation codes. What? He asked, alarmed. I'm ending it. All of it. This place, the signal, the legacy. Vero stepped forward. You won't survive. Adrien looked down at the capsules, the failures, the broken echoes of humanity's worst idea. Maybe that's the point. To end them, she had to end the part of herself that remembered why they were made. The core chamber of Echo Zero pulsed with faint blue light like a heart long forgotten by time, but still stubbornly beating. Suspended in its center, Echo Prime shimmered, the source of every war-born signal ever sent. It wasn't a mind. It wasn't even a person. It was memory, crystallized, encoded, and weaponized. Around Adrien, the air rippled with psychic static. Voices flickered in and out of the radio band. Her own voice, others, names she hadn't spoken in decades. Sisters, commanders, screaming, weeping, laughing, remembering. She gritted her teeth. As blood ran from her nose, Echo Zero is synchronizing with your neural pattern, Elune warned. The closer you get, the more it'll try to absorb you. Let it try, Adrien whispered. Vero planted the final core charges along the central conduit line, arms trembling. Last one's hot. He called out. 5-minute fuse. That gives us a narrow window to evac. Adrien didn't respond. Her gaze was locked on the doppelganger still watching her from the other side of the chamber, like a wolf at the edge of a firelight. Why aren't you stopping us? She asked it. The creature took a slow step forward. Because you are not the enemy. And what are you, then? Adrien shouted. A copy, a shade, a failed command. No, it said. I am what remains when purpose outlives memory. It pointed at Echo Prime. You are the last spark, the final witness. I was only ever a shadow of what you left behind. Adrien's hand hovered over the detonator clasp. You speak like you still believe in Earth. The creature blinked. Slowly, I believe in what Earth feared it would become. Suddenly, the lights flared crimson. A hiss of pressure, a thundering roar. Across the cradle, capsules began to open, war-born, half-grown, some skeletal, some still forming, some complete. 100 biological warnings blared across the intercom in fractured Terran. Phase activation breach, war-born neural sequence unlocked, protocol witness burn in effect. Vero shouted, they're waking. Elune screamed, Adrien. The cradle's fighting back. It wants to birth one last generation. Her fingers curled around the detonator. The whispers in her skull became a chorus. Every death, every order, every atrocity committed in her name or her ancestors, screams from Sinner's Reach, laughter from Alatha, silence from the cold canyons. She staggered, dropped to one knee. The glyph on her arm blazed with painful white light like it was trying to leap off her skin. Adrien, Elune cried, we have to go. No, she whispered, and then she stood. She walked toward Echo Prime, every step shaking the floor. The doppelganger didn't move, just watched. You were made for war, it said, but you chose not to be. I chose to remember, Adrien replied. She climbed the central days. Her fingers brushed the ancient cables. The system responded, accepting her as if she'd never left. A voice filled the chamber. Confirmed. Primary. Genetic key. Welcome back, Idrin's soul. The lights dimmed, then surged, and suddenly she saw everything. A full neural download. Thousands of warborn scattered across hidden facilities, ice-locked worlds, toxic seas. Some already stirring, some still dreaming, all connected, and in that moment, she could have commanded them with a thought, a whisper. She could have rebuilt the old army, made Earth feared again. It would have been so easy. One word, and the stars would burn. But she didn't. Instead, she spoke just one phrase into Echo Prime's core, end the cycle. Then she slammed the detonator clasp. The cradle screamed. The doppelganger stepped forward, reaching toward her anguish in its broken voice. You could have led us. Idrin stared back, eyes steady. I chose to be human. The explosion began as a whisper, then erupted into fire. The chamber collapsed. Conduits ruptured. Cryopods shattered. And Echo Prime died. Its signal faltered, then blinked out across the galaxy. Warborn cradles, those who hadn't awakened, froze. In stasis, memory links severed. Neural chains broken. The rising tide of ancient war died before it breached the shore. Vero dragged Elune into the evac tunnel as debris rained down around them. I see her, Elune cried. Idrin staggered through smoke and flame, bleeding, one eye blinded by shrapnel. They pulled her aboard Penance. The blast wave hit just as the freighter peeled away from the cradle. The entire structure imploded, collapsing into the dead moons. Crust, taking with it the last great ghost of Earth's darkest chapter. In the medbay, wrapped in gauze, breath shallow, Idrin opened her eyes. The tattoo was gone, burned off, erased. Vero sat beside her. You did it, he said, his voice low. You ended them. No, Idrin rasped. I ended dust. She turned her head. Now, maybe we can begin again, outside the viewport. The cradle's wreckage drifted in silence, and for the first time in decades, the signal was silent. She destroyed the last god of Earth's forgotten war, but the war wasn't done with her yet. The debris of Echo Zero still drifted like shattered bones across the void, but far from the ruin. In the heart of Dominion-held space, the final consequence of Idrin's decision had already begun. The cradle's destruction sent a psychic shockwave rippling through the dormant neural fields of every warborn seed across the galaxy, a severance, not just from command, from identity. Some withered back into silence, others didn't. In a prison lab orbiting the Red Veil Nebula, a half-preserved warborn hybrid screamed as its mind unraveled. Breaking containment. On the outskirts of the Dareth Fringe, a rogue fleet under no known command began broadcasting ancient Earth battle hymns on every frequency, and aboard the Velkrath, Matron Velisir stood before a burning holomap, watching worlds blink into chaos. There, breaking loose, she whispered. A Carrick's warlord snarled. Then we crushed the remnants. Velisir's eyes narrowed. You don't understand. You don't crush an idea. You survive it. She tapped the screen. Find Idrin's soul. Now, aboard the Penance. Idrin sat in the observation cradle, face illuminated by starlight and pain. Her body was healing, slowly, but something in her mind still felt split. The signal was gone, severed clean, but she could still feel them. Not as orders, not as threats, as questions, echoes. Are we still human? Do we still belong? Can something born for war choose peace? Elune stood beside her, arms folded, unusually quiet. You severed the chain, he said. That should have been the end. It never is, Idrin murmured. We left too many scars, not just on stars, but on minds, on memory. Vero entered the chamber next, clutching the data slate. We've picked up movement. For old colonies reporting simultaneous war-born awakenings. No command signal, but they're active. They're thinking for themselves and attacking. Idrin asked. Vero hesitated. No, not yet. They're watching. Suddenly, the comms buzzed. An emergency channel, encrypted in an old Earth cipher. Iluin's eyes widened. That shouldn't be possible. Idrin took the call. A grainy hologram flickered, the light face obscured, armor charred. But the voice unmistakable. The doppelganger, still alive. I survived, it said. And so did others. Idrin stared at the image. You lost, she said. I changed, it replied. Then it leaned forward. What happens to us now? What do we become without masters? The silence that followed was deep and cold. Because that question wasn't meant for her, it was meant for all of them across fractured systems. Warborn remnants began broadcasting the same question on open bands. They were no longer weapons. They were no longer bound. They were free. And in that freedom lay terror. The Velkrath arrived hours later, flanked by Dominion warships. Wrestling with shields and suspicion, they did not fire. Instead, Matron Velisir herself boarded Penance. Walking unarmed into Adrin's quarters, they locked eyes to survivors. Of different empires, both forged in cruelty, you ended a signal, Velisir said, but not a legacy. I didn't come to rewrite history, Adrin replied. I came to stop it from repeating. Velisir nodded once, then make them understand. Because if they rise again, Adrin finished the sentence. For her, we'll all burn. That night, on the bridge, Adrin stood before a galaxy listening. Vero rerouted every relay channel. Elune amplified the signal with the Dominion's reach. And Adrin saw scarred, weary, still alive broadcast her final message. No weapon, no declaration. Just truth. To those of you who remember Earth's final days, I was born in the cradle of a dying species, forged not to build, not to dream but to kill. They called us warborn. They built us to end threats. But no one taught us how to live after the threats were gone. We were used, discarded, buried, and some of us woke again angry, lost, alone. I know your pain. I carry it too. But hear this. You are not your creators. You are more than command chains, more than genetic purpose. You are free, and what we do now together will decide if we become monsters or something new. Across the stars, the warborn listened. Some returned to sleep. Some walked into the suns. Some simply wept, and some turned toward one another. For the first time, not to conquer, but to ask. Then came silence, and from that silence, possibility. Later, in her cabin, Adrin looked out at the galaxy. Still broken, still dangerous, but quieter. Elune entered. You gave them a choice. Adrin nodded. Not all will take it. No. She stood, gripping the cold metal of the viewport. But for the first time in centuries, we're writing our story, not finishing someone else's. Vero stepped in. What do we do now? Adrin smiled faintly. Now, we watch the stars, and we wait. Far away, in a black sector beyond any known chart, a single warborn figure etched something into the side of a cave wall. Not coordinates, not weapons, just a word. Hope. We weren't built to last, but we left behind something that would. A year had passed since Echo Zero fell. The stars were quieter now, not because peace reigned, but because something far more dangerous and far more human had begun. Reflection. No wars erupted. No fleets darkened the skies. The warborn did not unite. They did not conquer. They simply scattered. Some built colonies of silence on the outer rims, shunning contact but causing no harm. Others walked into black space and were never seen again. A few, the bravest, sought out humans, not to destroy, but to understand the species that had made them, and Adrin's soul became their symbol, not as a savior, but as the first to choose something else. Nidder's spire had been rebuilt, not as a fortress, not as a resistance base, but as a sanctuary, an embassy for broken things, for veterans, refugees, misfits, and yes, warborn. They came not in waves, but quietly, one at a time, each with stories, each with scars. The sign above the central dome bore no flag, no crest, only a phrase, etched in both Terran and Carrick script. Memory is not destiny. Inside, Adrin stood beside a new generation. Children, not warborn, not bred for war, real children. Some born to colonists, others adopted by old Dominion species. One, wide-eyed and feral, had once emerged from a warborn pod with no memories, and laughed a while to be dangerous. Adrin knelt beside her. Do you know what your name means? She asked gently. The girl nodded. You named me after a storm, because you came in like one. She smiled, missing teeth. You're not scared of me? Adrin held her gaze. I used to be scared of what I could become, she said. Then I realized fear keeps you honest. Far away, in the Carrick's capital, Matron Velisir stood before the Dominion Senate. She placed a fragment of Echo Prime's neural shell on the podium, charred and broken. This was the end of Earth's hubris, she said, but it was also the beginning of their redemption. Silence followed. Humanity made monsters, Velisir continued. But they also made one thing more dangerous than monsters: the ability to change. She turned her gaze toward the assembly. And if they can, what excuse do we have? The vote to establish shared warborn observation posts passed unanimously, not out of fear, but out of respect. Elune remained at Nader's spire. He had become a voice of reason across interstellar channels, crafting the first ethical AI-human interface protocols in the aftermath of Echo Zero. His work formed the basis of the Accord of Memory, a treaty, not between species, but between ideas. "We are more than what made us," he said once, standing beside Adrin. "We are what we choose to keep and what we choose to leave behind." She nodded. "And what we forgive." Pharaoh took command of the Watchfires, a neutral fleet built to patrol forgotten systems where rogue warborn still stirred in madness. He visited Adrin once every few cycles. Each time, he asked the same thing: "Do you regret it?" Each time, she gave a different answer. But today, her answer was simple: "I regret we ever had to choose." He nodded, then added, "But I don't regret who chose." And the doppelganger, it was never seen again, but messages still appeared, etched into asteroids, scratched into the walls of dead ships, simple phrases: "Still here, still learning, thank you." No one could trace them. Some say it wandered into deep space and built the graveyard of all the things warborn were meant to be and lit it on fire. Others believe it still watches over the children of Adrin's sanctuary, quietly, not as a guardian, but as a student. Years passed. Galaxies changed, but the story did not vanish, because stories never do. They echo through time, through stars, through scars, and long after Adrin's soul was gone. Her body burned in a ceremonial sky cremation above Earth's ruins. A child stood where the spire once was, a child with no mark, no past, but with one question written into her soul: why did she choose to destroy what made her? And the answer came, not from a monument, not from a book, but from the wind, from the starlight that broke the clouds, from the stillness that followed grief. Because she could, because someone had to, because being human means saying no, even when your blood says yes. That day, the galaxy learned what it means to be human.